Thank you. Thank you for your kind welcome. I'm very proud and very happy to be here on this PBS program taping. And of course, I'm very happy to be with Dr. Wayne again.
Thank you.
I know my story is a sad story, but it has been a story that gave me an experience of great spiritual growth and a deep understanding of what really matters in life. It is a story of everyone who lives through any kind of injustice. I believe that also it has given me a chance to love better and to be able to put myself in other people's skin, especially when they are hurt. I always tell Wayne that if maybe he was in my country before the genocide, teaching what he teaches today, maybe the genocide would not have taken place. And I hope everyone knows and America knows what a gift they have to have him. Sitting down in deep silence of that bathroom for 3 months and being hunted to be killed every day through the worst time of my life, I didn't know that I was about to discover the greatest source of joy in my own heart, which was God inside. He is bigger than any pain. There are a few things I would like to share with you. I know that we can learn to forgive. Do not let your heart be disturbed because of any pain. I see sometimes people take a chance to hurt each other. For example, fighting over a job promotion. But one thing I have learned is that when you hurt another person, you hurt yourself in one way or another. The most important thing I learned in that bathroom is that you can't hate people if they are struggling with the truth. As the Bible said, they do not know what they do. After I got out of the bathroom, I learned that my mom, my dad, my 2 brothers, my schoolmates, my relatives, my neighbors, everyone was dead. Every material belongings I cherished, it was destroyed. I learned that to every pain, there is a great purpose. I have learned a lot during those 3 months, and I knew that those lessons can help me to face the pain that I was going to go through. And I chose only to look at that. And as Anne Frank said in her diary, I still believe deep down in my heart that people are good at heart. And do not let yourself give up mankind. I know peace is possible. Thank you.
third of these rewards for reaching an inspired life is that your consciousness expands in every direction. What does this mean? Your consciousness expands in every direction. It means there's no up and there's no down. It means there's no right and there's no wrong. It means that there's no north and there's no south. It means that there's no beginning and no end. You begin to move into a consciousness place within yourself that you'll find yourself, when you move into spirit, you're going to find yourself doing things that you don't understand why you're doing them. In 1994, when Immaculée was imprisoned in this tiny little bathroom with 7 other people with no facilities, she did something that I found so astounding when I first met her, when she came to a lecture I had given in New York. And I was so taken by her. She didn't come to me and say, "Will you help me?" I sought her out and said, "How may I be of service to telling your story in a profound way?" And what she did when she entered that bathroom is she asked the pastor whose home she was in, "Do you have an English and a French dictionary?" And she learned English while she was being hunted to be killed. For what reason? Why would someone who is in that kind of a state practice, day in and day out, up to 8-10 hours, and she couldn't speak. They didn't speak for 91 days. No sound whatsoever. So, 5 years later, she is a survivor. She represents less than 0.5% of the Tutsi women of Rwanda who survived. All the rest were killed. She went into a place within herself and taught herself a language that she was going to need 5 years from now. That's what I mean by your consciousness expands in every direction. And then 5 years later, in 1999 or 2000, she had when she was here in America on an asylum visa, married, living out on Long Island, has 2 children, is assimilated into our culture, is a great spokesperson for transcending hatred on the planet. She woke every day 3 o'clock in the morning before she went to work at the UN and wrote every little detail of what happened in those 91 days. 150,000 words she wrote and gave that to me 5 years after that. And I said, "Immaculée, it's wonderful, but your native language is Kinyarwanda, your second language is French, your third language, so we got help in helping her to convert it into language that would be." But how did she know in 1994 that she was going to be in America and coming up on a stage like this and talking to our country in a language that is her third language? How did she know that? Your consciousness expands in every direction. When you have an inkling, when you have, like Ryan, when you have a feeling within you that this is something that you have to do, that you can't be stopped from doing it, the whole world changes. And you start and you listen to it. And you find yourself, if someone hands you a book, and then someone else talks about that book, and then someone else mentions it, and then you see the author on television, and all of a sudden you start saying, "Wait a minute, I've got to listen to this. I am being directed. I'm being called. I trust in this. I totally, completely trust." Your consciousness expands in every direction when you enter the world of spirit, and you get yourself pulled in these directions, and you allow yourself to be pulled in that way. That's what I mean by your consciousness expands in every direction. Nothing is impossible, and whatever you find yourself doing, that's what you allow yourself to do and what you allow yourself to be. There's a great quote by Rumi. He's just one of the greatest. Every tree and plant Every tree and plant in the meadow seemed to be dancing. Those which average eyes would see as fixed and still. That's what happens when your consciousness expands in every direction. You see, you understand the Tao. The Tao is like it's the silence between the notes that makes the music. It's the space between the bars that holds the tiger. You're a sculptor and you sculpt yourself a vase. And what do you think makes the vase? What makes the vase is not the tile, and it's not the substance of the material. It's the inner space within there that is surrounding it. Without that inner space within, there can be no vase. And without that inner space within you, there's no you. You're not skin and bone and all that. You are. That encapsulates an inner silence, an inner place that is totally and completely yours, uniquely yours. Your consciousness expands in every direction. When you do, you start practicing things like kindness, where judgment was before. I've often said that when you have a choice to be right or to be kind, just pick kind. Why? Because it's more closely aligned with your spirit. You begin to exude something called love. You feel it for everyone. Believe it or not, at the end of Immaculate's book, she goes to the prison where the people who were her killers, one was her mathematics teacher. And what happens is that you begin to embrace a kind of love even for the people who would do such harm to you. And I'm telling you, that's what saved her. You'll see that when you read it. That's what saved her. The ability to go to that place within, that place of forgiveness. As Mark Twain said, forgiveness is the fragrance that the violet sheds on the heel that has crushed it. Powerful thinking. You become an instrument of truth. You become someone who listens. You become someone who is God realized. Okay? Your consciousness expands in every direction. I want to tell you something that I think will be very, very helpful to you. I want you to think about the troublemakers in your life. I want you to think about the troubled ones in your life. I want you to think about the ones in your life that are hooked on drugs. I want you to think about the ones who don't cooperate, the ones who don't fit in, the ones who perhaps are disrespectful, use language that you don't approve of, use substances that you find difficult, people that perhaps you work at. But mostly, I want you to think about people like that in your family. Now, I know that you think it's always somebody else, but they're thinking of you. And I want to tell you about how consciousness expands in every direction when you take these people who are your greatest teachers, the people who have come into your life to teach you how to love them through what it is that they're struggling with, what it is that they are going through. It's just, there's a need there, a need to be loved, that it's very difficult to love certain people under certain circumstances in certain ways, particularly when they behave in ways that are so troublesome to you. And I want to take you back in my own family, and I've been given permission to do this. One of my children who got herself into that kind of a state as a teenager and struggled with her own self and her own addictions and her own fears, and the process over a longer period of time, I called together a family meeting. And I put everybody in the family together, and I had everybody in the family tell her how her behavior was affecting everyone else. And each person went through and talked about how difficult it was. I went through and talked about how I couldn't sleep, and it was and her mom told her about how worried she was and how scared she was and how upset she was. And we went through this whole thing with this wonderful, beautiful child. And that night she went out and behaved in the same ways that she'd been behaving all along. Almost as if to say, I just don't need to hear how bad I am any longer. And I want to tell you something that I learned since then. I've talked to my daughter about this, and today she's this soul who devotes a big part of her life to helping people who were as troubled as she was at one time. Divinely beautiful, beautiful young lady. I want to tell you about a woman. Her name was Peace Pilgrim. Peace Pilgrim was a woman, an elderly woman who walked around the country, and all she did, dressed in white, was go into different communities, and she would just talk about peace. That's all she did. She talked peace wherever she went. And in the process of talking peace, there would be no ads, and no one knew her name. She was just called Peace Pilgrim. I believe there's a website about Peace Pilgrim today. And I was in touch with Peace Pilgrim. And then it turns out she had read some of my books, and we had communicated. And then one day she was walking along the highway to another town, and she was killed by a car that didn't see her. It was an accident, and she died. But she left a journal behind. And in her journal, Peace Pilgrim, this woman who devoted her life to peace, talked about the Bamemba tribe in South Africa. And I want to share this with you because this could be one way of returning spirit to the place in your home where there's emptiness, where there's hurt, where there's pain, where there's fear, where there's anger, where there's worry. In the Bamemba tribe, Peace Pilgrim says, when a person acts irresponsibly or unjustly, he or she is placed in the center of the village, alone and unfettered. All the work ceases. The entire village gathers around the accused individual. Then each person of every age begins to talk out loud to the accused. One at a time, each person tells all of the good things the one in the center ever did in his or her lifetime. Every incident, every experience that can be recalled with any detail and accuracy is recounted. All positive attributes, good deeds, strengths, and acts of kindness are recited carefully and at length. No one is permitted to fabricate, to exaggerate, or to be facetious about the accomplishments or the positive aspects of the accused person. The tribal ceremony often lasts several days, not ceasing until everyone is drained of every positive comment that can be mustered. At the end, the tribal circle is broken, a joyous celebration takes place, and the person is symbolically welcomed back into the tribe. Necessity for such ceremonies is rare. Now, I'd like to think about that in terms of what I learned since the family meeting that I called a decade or so ago. If I were to do it over, I would place this beautiful child in the center of that circle, and I would have everyone talk about the wonderful things about her, about however, wherever we go, she just always thinks about the downtrodden. Dad, can we just take some donuts out to these workers, these migrant workers? They never get to have just some. Can't we just go over there? Come on, Dad, let's just take them some donuts. Can't we just do something nice for this person? I would tell them about the time that she went over on Mother's Day and bought a little trinket for her mom and wrote a little poem next to it that I'll talk about how she made us laugh all the time when she was a baby, and with that little tongue of hers and the little words that she made up and that funny little way that she walked and her own sense of independence. And we would go on and on and on with this. And if we can teach those who are troubled, those who cause us pain, those who use language that we don't approve of, those who dress in ways, those who do things to their bodies that we don't think they should do, if we can just immerse them in a culture of acceptance and love, even if they're behaving in ways that seem so anathema to you, if you can just find a way to continue to do that, eventually that spirit has to raise, and your consciousness expands in every direction. And 4, you find yourself in a new and a great and a wonderful world. Your world changes. The world that you used to live in before you were in spirit is no longer there. When you're touched deeply by living in spirit, by awakening with the morning breeze, by catching every thought that you have that is not one of God realization, by finding yourself saying over and over and over again, it is my intention to be in this state of God realization. It is my intention to be there. I am going to live in spirit. When you do, the world changes. Things that you didn't notice before suddenly come alive. I'm going to tell you a story that just blew me away. I think it perhaps was the signature story of my life in terms of connecting to spirit. I've never experienced anything like this before. I finished writing Inspiration, Your Ultimate Calling, on the 23rd of April. And I knew that the book was going to have 18 chapters in it, because 18 is that magical number, one infinite source. One infinite source. I put that number on my dashboard of my car. I have it on the mirror. It's a reminder. One infinite source, 18. It's the number of chapters in the Bhagavad Gita. It's the number of holes on a golf course. It's got to have something holy to it. And so I had 17 chapters written, and I was thrilled to have that completed, but I still had one chapter to go, but I was holding that off until my birthday on the 10th of May. And I knew what that last chapter was going to be, my experience of living an inspired life, just telling it on my birthday, right around 3:13 or so in the morning. So I was essentially done. And I went for a walk that day, and when I finished that chapter, that 17th chapter, I told a story in there about my friend Jack Boland. He passed away about 12 years ago. Jack was a Unity minister in Detroit. A man who, when I wrote Your Erroneous Zones 3 decades ago, called me up and asked me if he could put together some tapes on it, and would I give him permission. And he had started a Unity church over on the east side of Detroit, and asked me if he could use that. I said, absolutely. I had no. And over the years, I began to speak at his church and his congregation, and come to Detroit a lot, my home, and we became very close. We became like brothers. And he got very sick, and he had cancer throughout his back and so on. And I went with him to my friend Deepak Chopra's place, the Ayurveda Center out in Massachusetts. during the day we would go out, and then in the evening he would come in, and Jack always had to have a story. He had to tell a story, and he started talking to me about these wonderful little creatures called monarch butterflies, and how much he loved them, and the reason that he loved them, he said, Wayne, these are the most amazing little things in the world. I mean, they've got a brain the size of a pinprick, just no brain essentially, and they're made out of tissue paper, like toilet paper. They're just flimsy little things, and they come out, and they come out of a chrysalis on a branch in a tree in Brazil. Now they don't have a brain, and they're made out of toilet paper, essentially. And they fly to Nova Scotia, 4,385 miles away. And they spend some time there doing whatever you do in Nova Scotia if you're a monarch butterfly. And then they turn around, these pinprick brain toilet paper insects, and they fly all the way back to Brazil. But not only do they go back to Brazil, they go back to the same tree. Not only do they go back to the same tree, they go back to the same branch. And they start the whole process all over again with another cocoon. I mean, it's like, I've got a brain that's supposed to be pretty good size. I leave my cell phone in the bedroom. I did this just the other day, and I walk out of the bedroom, I can't find my cell phone. I have to call the number on another phone, and I'm listening to this funny little sound and looking under pillows. I know it's over. I had to call twice because I didn't want to get charged for the first call. Well, anyway. And these things can find the same branch that they came out of a cocoon on. So anyway, he would tell me about the miracle of these things. All right? So I wrote that whole story. The 17th chapter is about the language of Spirit, how Spirit speaks to us in ways that we're not even aware of. It speaks in terms of alignments. When things align, when the same numbers appear, the same ideas keep showing up, when these kinds of alignments show up. So I called my editor, Joanna, who's here tonight, who's edited everything I've done for the last 30 years or so, and only person in the world who can read my handwriting. I read her the story of Jack and the monarch butterfly, and I called my friend, the president of Hay House, who's my publisher, who's also here tonight, Reed Tracy, my best friends in the world. And I read both of them the story. All right? And then, because I always do that when I finish a chapter, I read it to just see what it sounds like. Took off on my walk. It's 12:30 in the afternoon. I'm going for a walk along Kanapali Beach. And I walk, and I get out to this place called Black Rock, out on West Maui. And I'm walking there, and I'm at peace, and I'm going to meditate, and I got my cell phone with me, I found it, and a monarch butterfly flies right out of the tree, and I don't think I've ever seen monarchs there before. Right? A monarch butterfly flies out of the tree and circles and lands right there, 3 feet in front of me. So I think, well, a little bit of a coincidence, but that's because I just read the whole story, and I reach over to pick up this butterfly, and it looks at me like I'm a butterfly. I don't deal with humans. My DNA is programmed to stay away from you. And it flies away. And it goes out about 40 yards, and it makes a U-turn, and it comes back, and it lands on my finger, right here. And I look at it, and I have never had this happen before in my life. I've had butterflies brush up against me once, but I've never had one just seek me out. So it lands here, and I immediately reach for my cell phone, and I called Joanna, you remember? And I said, Joanna, there's a monarch butterfly on my finger. You know what I just read to you this morning, she said, as she always does. She's so sweet and peaceful. Meditate. I said, meditate? This is a monarch butterfly. I just wrote about him and Jack and all. She said, just go meditate on him. So I call another number. And I call Reed, the president of Hay House, my buddy. All right? And I said, Reed, I read to you this morning about a monarch butterfly. I've now got one on my finger. It flew to me. He said, get a picture. I said, what are you talking about? Get a picture. I'm got my bathing suit on and a cell phone. I don't have a camera. He said, we've been thinking about what's going to be on the cover of the book. He said, this is perfect. Right away thinking about, this is inspiration. This is like it's come to you for that reason. Get a picture. Get a picture. So I took Joanna's advice and I meditated. Now it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon when this happened, and I meditated for 30 minutes, and I called Joanna back, and I said, it's still with me. And I called Reed back. He said, get a picture. So, now this butterfly is doing, during the meditation, I don't know how to say this without sounding strange, but it's okay because every word of this is true. I swear to you, this butterfly was trying to talk to me. I don't know how close you've ever looked at a monarch butterfly, but it had tiny little, almost like teeth, but they're not really teeth. I know they don't have teeth. And I bring the butterfly up real close to my eye, and it's doing this. I swear. And I said, Jack? Because I had just written about him. I thought it was Jack. And then I took the butterfly and I put it over by my ear, in case it was making little sounds and it had a little, I was just totally freaked out by this thing because it's now been an hour. It's been an hour. It's now, and it won't go. It's like I take it over here, I put it over on this finger, it's over here, and it won't go. And I'm going, okay, that was not, it won't leave. It's just connected to me. So I walk, I said, maybe Reed's got a point here. Maybe we need to get a picture of this thing. So I decided to walk back to where I live. And I walk along now on Maui in the afternoon, the trade winds come in, and they really blow hard in the afternoon. And I'm walking, the ocean is over here, the trades are coming in, and the butterfly's wings, toilet paper, are all the way bent over. But it won't leave. All the way bent, as far as it can go. And then I come back and I get out of the wind and it goes, it's like flashing and making sounds, and I hold it up. So I'm walking along the beach, the beach there, and there's a little girl she's about 4, 5, 6 years old, who's totally traumatized because she got the wrong color Slurpee. That's her issue, okay? Giving her mother more grief, I want to tell her about Immaculate in the bathroom. I want to tell her, she, I want purple, I wanted yellow, and you gave me purple Slurpee. I hate purple Slurpees. Going on and on. It's real, So I tapped her on the shoulder, tears were running, I said, you want to see my pet butterfly? I did. She said, "What's his name? What's his name? What's his name?" I said, "Jack." This is Jack. I did. And she went from, I don't know how to say this. She went from pissed to blissed, okay? I don't know if they can use that. She went from, being so upset to just this total state of bliss in just 1 second. The tears dried up. She smiled. She wanted to know if she could take it home. I said, "No." What are you talking about? This is my butterfly, you know? I get all the way back to where I'm going. It's now about 1:30 in the afternoon. About an hour and a half has gone by. I live in a place where they have a concierge downstairs, and there's a pool there, and there's a girl there. Her name is Cindy. And I walk upstairs, and I call Cindy down at the pool, and I said, "Cindy, can you walk over to the ABC store and get a portable camera and be here in 5 minutes?" She said, "You want me to come to your apartment with a portable camera in 5 minutes?" I said, "Yes, I do." She said, "Why?" I said, "I want you to take a picture of me and my butterfly." She said, "What are you smoking?" I said, "No, it's true. I found a butterfly, and she does yoga, and she's like one of these people." And she said, "Okay." I also said, "There's $100 in it for you if you can get here in 5 minutes." She went up there, came back. She had got one of these little cameras. I went out, sat on the lanai with the manuscript, and I had 29 pictures she got of me with the butterfly, and I was posing with it. It was like, over here. See my butterfly over here? My butterfly. I was. I didn't know what he wanted. I don't know what to do, but So she went. That's the actual butterfly. Truly it is. Now we had to take a different picture because those, $13 cameras aren't the kind you can use on photographs, on books, and so on. But I insisted that they put Jack on my finger on this, so they transposed it through, through computers or whatever. So that's the actual butterfly. And if it flies out of there right now, I'm going to fall down. All right? I promise you. So I get back. I had the picture. She went, took the camera, and got the pictures developed. It's now around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's been, or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's been 2 hours. Right? But now I don't know what I'm going to do with this butterfly. What do you feed a butterfly? What do I get a leash? Do I get a cage? Am I going to keep him? Do I, get rid of him? Whatever. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. But I set it down on the manuscript that I had handwritten that morning, where I talked about Jack and the monarch butterfly, and I set it on there, figuring it maybe recognized that this is where it came from or whatever. I had it walking around on there, and I went back, took a shower, it was gone, did a little meditation, did a little work, and so on. Came back, the butterfly is still there. 2.5 hours. And I reached down after having taken a shower, and I put my finger down there, and the butterfly looked back up at me just like it did when I went to pick it up down here, as if to say, "Who are you and what are you doing? And I'm going to show you that I'm not sick and this isn't an accident." And it took up and it circled me and it took off straight out towards the ocean, made a circle, and it was gone. All right? And that's my butterfly story. And it's... And what I'm suggesting to you is that you pay attention to the powerful things that show up in your life, and that these things that we call coincidences and so on are much, much more aligned with Spirit than you may have ever thought them to be. There are no accidents in a universe which has an organizing intelligence that supports it and creates it. And anything like this, any of these kinds of things, can be very powerful messages. It's the language of Spirit speaking to you. And there's no doubt whatsoever, no matter what anybody thinks, that I don't know that was Jag. And if you're in a place where there are no beginnings and there are no ends, and there's no north and there's no south and there's no up and there's no down, that means it's infinite and there's only one place. And if you're in a place that only has oneness in it, then it can be anywhere it wants to. That Spirit can enter onto Maui on a butterfly just as easily as it can enter into a butterfly in Brazil or any place else. There's no space, there's no place. After you discover yourself to be in a new and a great and a wonderful world, you'll start noticing these things. And then dormant forces, faculties and talents come alive. Dormant forces. Dormant forces are forces that you thought were inaccessible, that were dead, that were not available to you. These things that my teacher, Carl Jung, who I mentioned earlier, called synchronicities or serendipities, that you're having a thought, and because of the thought that you are having, it manifests right there for you. You start noticing it, and you don't doubt it. You become a being of sharing. You become someone who acts as God acts, which is someone who is constantly giving, who is forgiving. I received a letter in the mail that illustrates this phenomenon of dormant forces coming alive. The letter was from a woman who at that time was living in Topeka, Kansas. She said, "Dear Wayne, thank you so much for your presentations and your tapes. You are frequently my traveling companion as I drive in my job. I just wanted to add my testimony to the power of meditation and intention. I was an on and off meditator, but realized how much more smoothly my days went when I was on it. I visited Kenya, Africa, in June of 2002. And met an 8-year-old orphan girl there. As I sat on the ground, she crawled into my lap, and a voice said, 'Take her home.' A dormant force. 'Take her home.' She actually heard this voice. I physically turned around, but no one was there. Again the voice said, 'Take her home.' I asked my 18-year-old daughter, who was with me on the trip, what she thought about my adopting this beautiful girl. And with the quickness of a sprinter, she replied, 'Go for it.' When we returned to the States a week later, I realized that if I didn't follow through with this adoption, I'd always regret it. Regret seemed much larger than the task of adopting. I began doing the meditation each morning, and through a series of miracles, the child was able to come to this country accompanied by a newly made friend. I named her Nellie, and she has been a blessing to me and my other children. Nellie's adoption was part 2 of God's plan. Part 1 had unfolded a couple of years before, and I felt guided to sponsor a series of workshops for which I profited $10,000 with very little time or work. And guess what the final cost of adopting Nellie was? The first time I heard the voice, I chose to disregard it and or think it through, making lists of pros and cons. But I couldn't rest until I proceeded with the workshops. That's how I explained to my family that I needed to proceed with adopting Nellie. Obedience had brought abundance into our lives, and now it was time to share that abundance. Nellie has brought the abundance of love and forgiveness into our home. She is truly a treasure. Thank you for sharing your gift of this wonderful meditation. It changed my life and the life of a little girl. What a beautiful letter. I invited Gail to come here and Nellie, and I would like them to stand and be recognized right now. Gail and Nellie. Come on out there. Thank you. That's so beautiful. Thank you. Inspiration. Gail and Nellie, you inspire me. You listened to your dream, and you didn't go with the cons. You went with the pros and made it happen. And we are honored to have both of you here. You're the beautiful people that this world needs more of. One of the things I believe about nobility, about true nobility, is that true nobility is not about being better than anyone else. It's about being better than you used to be. And I think your letter illustrates that when you move into spirit, dormant forces come alive, and you're just better than you used to be. And so are you, Ryan, and so are you, Immaculate, and so are all of us who listen and take that step to move into spirit. There's a man on this planet whom I've loved for many, many years. His name is Ram Dass. Many of you have heard of him. He wrote a book back in the late 1960s called Be Here Now. It was the beginning. Ram Dass taught me so much about what kind of speaker to be, what kind of human being to be. His teacher, Neem Karoli Baba in India, after he left Harvard and went to India, he was a Harvard professor, and he left all of that behind, and he met this great teacher who told him, serve God, feed people. And so he donated all of the proceeds of his book, Be Here Now, to various charities. Very seldom took a speaking fee, had it all donated to charities. 1997, my friend Ram Dass, as you see there, was struck down with a stroke. And I've been working hard to help him to rehabilitate himself. And it's been one of my great joys. And you'll know in a moment why I love this man so much. And I've worked so hard to bring his the attention of the world to where he is now. He ended up with nothing because he gave it all away. And I came into his life in a series of, quote, fortuitous accidents that have allowed me to be of service to him. And a few years back, he had many devotees, many people who just respect him so immensely, and I'm one of them. I think of him as one of the greatest speakers I've ever heard. He always entered in a room from the back. He was always open. He always had a great sense of humor, was able to poke fun at himself at any time, and just great stories of India and meditation and so on. Someone I love very much. And I'm going to show you what kind of a person he was, and I'm including this because it's about finding inspiration in anything. Like Immaculate's story tells about finding inspiration in the midst of a genocide. Most of us won't have to encounter such an undertaking in our lives. But there are still many horrors and many difficulties and many struggles that show up in our life. And when we're in spirit, we move away from a sense of feeling sorry for ourselves and instead look for what the lesson is. Steve and Anita had a daughter named Rachel. Rachel was brutally murdered, and her body was left. And they wrote to Ram Dass, who was their teacher, and they said, how can we, after losing our daughter, how can we find spirit? How can we be inspired? How can we find God in events such as this? And there are many of you watching who have encountered these kinds of acts and have also encountered accidents and things that just don't seem to make sense. People just taken away from us at what are seemingly the wrong times. And this is what Ram Dass wrote to Steve and Anita. One of the most beautiful letters I've ever read. He said, Dear Steve and Anita, Rachel finished her work on earth and left the stage in a manner that leaves those of us left behind with a cry of agony in our hearts as the fragile thread of our faith is dealt with so violently. Is anyone strong enough to stay conscious through such teachings as you are receiving? Probably very few. And even they would only have a whisper of equanimity and peace amidst the screaming trumpets of their rage, grief, horror, and desolation. I can't assuage your pain with any words, nor should I. For your pain is Rachel's legacy to you. Not that she or I would inflict such pain by choice, but there it is, and it must burn its purifying way to completion. For something in you dies when you bear the unbearable, and it is only in that dark night of the soul that you are prepared to see as God sees, and to love as God loves. Now is the time to let your grief find expression, no false strength. Now is the time to sit quietly and speak to Rachel and thank her for being with you these few years and encourage her to go on with whatever her work is, knowing that you will grow in compassion and wisdom from this experience. In my heart, I know that you and she will meet again and again and recognize the many ways in which you have known each other. And when you meet, you will know in a flash what now it is not given to you to know, why this had to be the way it was. Our rational minds can never understand what has happened, but our hearts, if we keep them open to God, will find their own intuitive way. Rachel came through you to do her work on earth, which includes her manner of death. Now, her soul is free, and the love that you can share with her is invulnerable to the winds of changing time and space. In that deep love, include me. In love, Ram Dass. I just don't think writing gets any better than that. And for those of you who can't figure it out, perhaps just listening to those words and being able to find inspiration even in the most horrifying of times. When you're in spirit, you have a different kind of a knowing, one that doesn't require you to continue to suffer. And finally, number 6, the rewards for being in spirit. You discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamed that you could be. You practice radical humility. People who have inspired me in my life include Rosa Parks, passed away not too long ago, Nelson Mandela, President Kennedy in the midst of the Cuban Missile Crisis when he went within and found a way by connecting to his private source to avoid a nuclear confrontation. Martin Luther King Jr.'s teachings about the only way to convert an enemy to a friend is through love. There's no other way. But you know, I would be remiss in a program on inspiration if I didn't include the person, perhaps the one person, who has been my greatest source of inspiration. I was born in 1940, the youngest of three. My father walked out. In fact, when my mother brought me home from the hospital, she told me that my father had moved in with another woman and left my oldest brother, who was 4, and my next oldest brother, Dave, Jim and Dave, who was 2, less than 2, in the care of a 4-year-old. He was someone who paid no support, who wandered, who was frequently with other women, and so on. He was an alcoholic and visited a lot of difficulty. There was no time in those days for welfare and so on. There was a depression. My brother was anemic. My mother was working for a while as a candy girl, earning $17 a week, and she put my brother Dave and myself into a series of foster homes sponsored by the Methodist Church because there just simply was no other way. But her nightmare was very, very real. Her family had been split, but she held a vision of reuniting her family one day. She visited when it was possible, but we were 17 miles away in Mount Clemens, and it might as well have been 17,000 miles because she didn't drive, and had no automobile or any way to get out there hardly. Did what she could, but she could get a ride. But in 1949, she married a man that she really wasn't in love with just because she wanted to reunite her boys and got us all back together. Married another alcoholic, abusive man. When he wasn't drinking, he was fine, but he never wasn't drinking. And I can remember my mom waking up every morning in those years, when I was 9 until I was about 17, getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, taking 3 buses to work at Chrysler, where she was a secretary, working all day, coming home, getting home at 5:45 off the bus at Peerless and Morass Road, and coming in and then making dinner for her 3 hungry boys, and doing this over and over and over again. Everyone in our neighborhood loved our home because my mom was this cool lady that just never was anything but positive and uplifting. She, none of us would ever have even for a moment disrespected her. She didn't demand our respect, but she certainly got it. She took incredible pride in herself, never would leave the home without her hair perfectly coiffed and in the right clothes and so on. Weekends for my mom in those days were spent down in the basement washing clothes and ironing clothes. Her mornings were spent making lunches, working. And then her own mother became very sick, and I watched as my mother took care of her mother. She had 4 other siblings, but it was always her. Everything was on her. She brought her into her home, cooked for her, took care of her until she passed away. And then, wonder of wonders, my stepfather, whom she had finally divorced when I was 15, his alcohol use and tobacco use was finally taking its final toll. And I watched her as she went to the home of this man who had done nothing but abuse her in all the years he was with her. And she cooked for him, and she did his laundry for him, and she took care of him and provided for him. Today, she approaches 90. She still bowls twice a week. She drives herself takes care of herself, doesn't complain. She lives and breathes love in every way. And in a book that I picked up by Michael Murphy called What I Meant to Say, what happened was they were leaving a Thanksgiving dinner, and Michael looked at his mom, and they were exchanging just sort of polite expressions. And it was just small talk. Yeah, Mom, thanks for Thanksgiving, and so on. And he looked and he wrote this book, and he wrote these words. He said, what I meant to say was, how can I possibly say goodbye to the person who was the first to hold me, the first to feed me, and the first to make me feel loved? From a distance, I watch you move about, doing the mundane tasks that to everyone else seem so routine, but for me, the tasks you lovingly completed year after year built and reinforced the foundation, the structure that made my world a safe and comfortable place to grow. All that I am and all that I can be traced back to is you. Whatever accomplishments I have made along the way would not have occurred without first believing in myself. And you were the person who always believed in me. Now, with a family of my own, I am amazed at the number of times I hear your words flow from my mouth. This phenomenon was at first most irritating. But now it warms me as I've come to understand that there's a part of you that will live on in me forever. When time parts us, I pray that you will reach across from the other side to again touch my face and whisper in my ear for your warm and gentle presence in my life. For this, I will always be most thankful. Yes, Mother. You inspire me. My mom. Inspiration can come from anywhere. You can be a source of it, and you can find it in a book, you can find it in a painting, you can find it in a conversation, you can find it in a movie. I can't tell you how many of those kinds of things have been sources of inspiration to me. There was a great composer, his name was Don McLean, and he wrote some great music. Bye, bye, Miss American Pie. Drove my Chevy to the levee, but the levee was dry. You know that. And he also wrote another song that he wrote after he read the story of a man who was a great artist. His name was Vincent van Gogh. And on the 30th of March, in 1852, Anne Cornelia van Gogh gave birth to a brand new little boy named Vincent Wilhelm van Gogh, and he was stillborn. And she buried him the next day. 1 year to the day later, on March the 30th, 1853, Anne Cornelia van Gogh gave birth to a second little boy named Vincent Wilhelm van Gogh, who became one of the great artists Never sold a painting in his lifetime. But today his paintings sell in the millions and millions of dollars. He was a troubled young man. He believed that he was a replacement child. Some say. Some say that he was the same child who came back the second time. But he went through a troubled life. He struggled for his sanity. He struggled for it. And he did some beautiful paintings, some of the most beautiful ever done, of ragged people. And Don McLean read a book about Van Gogh and was so inspired just by the reading of that book that he wrote a song that he called Vincent. On the 27th of July in 1890, at the age of 37, after having painted some of his most beautiful paintings, one of which was called Starry Night, Vincent van Gogh walked out to his artistic writing place with his brushes in one hand and a revolver in the other. And he placed it to his heart, and he shot himself in the heart. It took him 2 days to die. And when Don McLean read about that, he wrote a song, the lyrics to which have always touched me so deeply. Starry, starry night.
Starry, starry night. Paint your palette blue and gray. Look out on a summer's day with eyes that know the darkness in my soul. Shadows on the hills. Sketch the trees and the daffodils. Catch the breeze and the winter chills in colors on the snowy linen land. Now I understand what you tried to say to me, how you suffered for your sanity, and how you tried to set them free. They would not listen, they did not know how. Perhaps they'll listen now. Starry, starry night. Flaming flowers that brightly blaze. Swirling clouds in violet haze. Reflect in Vincent's eyes of china blue. Colors changing hue. Ornate fields of amber grain. Weathered faces lined in pain are soothed beneath the artist's loving hand. Now I understand what you tried to say to me, how you suffered for your sanity, and how you tried to set them free. They would not listen, they did not know how. Perhaps they'll listen now, for they could not love you, but still your love was true. And when no hope was left inside on that starry, starry night, you took your life as lovers do. But I could have told you, Vincent, this world was never meant for one as beautiful as you.
One of the essential principles for living an inspired life is to remember that our desires don't arrive on our schedule. They arrive when they're supposed to. I'd like to close out this program on inspiration with all of these inspiring participants, with all of the wonderful help of all of you who have inspired me so much, with a quote from one of my great teachers, Ralph Waldo Emerson. We are very near to greatness. One step and we can be safe. Can't you take the one leap, just one leap? And from A Course in Miracles, I leave you with these beautiful words. There is a way of living in the world that is not here, although it seems to be. You do not change appearance, though you smile more frequently. Your forehead is serene. Your eyes are quiet. You walk this path as others walk. Nor do you seem to be distinct from them, although you are indeed. Thus can you serve them while you serve yourself. A new way of living, to be in spirit. Thank you for watching. God bless you.